There's a new toy in town.
And I got to play with it all month long. So in this video, we're gonna share with you what we think of the cube.
Hey Provident Preppers, I'm Zach.
And I'm Kylene, and I am so excited today because I have a new friend. This is the cube, and it is the latest in freeze dryers. And before, we really only had one choice in home freeze dryers, but when Matt and Zach called us and talked to us about this, I am thrilled because you guys have done some fantastic improvements on some of the things that were really frustrating with the freeze dryers that I have. So Zach, tell me about what you've done.
There were a few things we set out to do that we wanted to make better in our own lives for freeze drying. The first thing was I hated changing the oil in the freeze dryer. So that was the very first thing that we set out to do, is to have a vacuum pump that doesn't use oil. The next pain point though with the vacuum pump was the hose and having it sit outside. So the next thing we did from there is we put it inside the cabinet.
Okay, so check this out. And this, okay, it's on a really cool cart, but look.
So then beyond that was, it seemed like in so many of the batches that we were doing, it would come to the end and not really know that it was dry.
Right, I have to add some time. You have to check it and add time, and yeah.
Some of that has to do with food, but a lot of that has to do with now what we've done in our moisture sensing technology to be able to know how much moisture is coming out of the food for real.
Now, let's see. Now this is different because there's no latch here. It's magnetic. Talk to me about that.
We did learn that we could have a magnet there and just make it look a little sleeker. As far as functionality, it just works. The magnet actually holds it in place and then the vacuum pulls the door.
So this is nice and easy. Okay, now these trays, this is a smaller chamber than what I'm used to. And it's square. It's, well, okay, except for down here. It's square, it's not round. Talk to me about the design of that.
The design of the chamber is actually one of the things that we have patented. And because it's more square, we don't have a lot of wasted space creating the cabinet space that is unusable. And so we're able to put wider trays in a smaller chamber and still freeze dry the same and more than the competition.
Okay, and there was one other thing that we talked about. Tell me about this really cool thing.
So we have added a jar seal mode to the software of this.
So like a vacuum seal, so I can vacuum seal my jars.
Yes, all of your dry foods, put in jars.
How would I put this in there?
So you remove the shelf unit, all the trays would come out with your food.
Okay.
Just
Let's
the
do
same
that.
as before.
And I would need to unplug this,
Yep.
right?
And it unplugs pretty simply.
Just like that.
Just like so. That gets set aside. You put your jars on here and put that inside. Your seal goes back on because you need the vacuum to happen still. I like to start in this corner against the door. You close the door and you go to the jar seal mode, and it's 2.5 minutes and you can do 9 quart jars at once.
That is so cool because I really like vacuum sealing. One of the things that I should point out is the cart, because we have our other ones in the garage, right? And this is kind of really nice because it's mobile. I can make it go anywhere. And the other thing that I like is that the bucket where we drain the liquid or the water from is underneath. It sits right here in this cart. And so that's really clever. Okay, is there anything else about this that you want to share with us that makes it a little bit different?
Well, one important feature is we've added a Candy Express mode.
For all the Skittle lovers?
But the Candy Express mode, you simply put the candy in with it at room temperature, push start, 2 hours and 20 minutes later, your candy is done.
Wow. That is really fast. 2 hours and 20 minutes. All right, Zach. So tell me, how easy is this really? Can I do this without Jonathan, or do I need him?
Oh, you can do it all by yourself. It's really, really simple, because once you push start, you're presented with the 3 modes that are there. Is your food pre-frozen? If it is, you put it in there and you choose frozen. In whatever amount of time it takes to freeze down to where it's not going to thaw your food anymore.
Okay.
It will just freeze and freeze and freeze. And then it will tell you it's ready for food and will notify you when it does. You come put your pre-frozen food in and push start. Then you go away until you get the notification again that it's dry.
And then I just take it out and package it.
That's right.
This is awesome. I am so glad that you guys have done this. Now for this next month, I'm going to put this through the test and see what I think, because I have been freeze drying for a couple of years now, and I've freeze dried a lot of food. And I have a little grandbaby that asked Grandma to freeze dry some food so when I fly out there in a month, I can stock them up for a while. So I'll put it through the ringer and we'll see how this performs, and then I'll show you.
We've now had the cube for just over a month, and we've put a few miles on this thing. I'm going to let Mama tell you about most of those miles.
I put all those miles on it because I personally love freeze drying, and there's several reasons why I love it. Some people really think that it's just for emergency preparedness and for food storage, and I don't believe that it is. Like, I use it for so much more than that, but it is for that.
Yeah, it certainly can be used for that.
Yeah, and we have food that we intend to store for a little while longer, but for the most part, we are using this in our regular diet, and we use the freeze dryer a lot to preserve the harvest as we grow these fresh fruits and vegetables. The other thing that we do is to reduce waste, right, for leftovers. So, for example, these green beans that we did, they were a Christmas party. It was a catered party. They had these big metal pans, right? The aluminum foil pans packed full of them. Well, the green beans didn't go like everything else went. So they had a bunch left over and they were just going to toss them. And you know what? I'm like, no, I'll take them home because I can freeze dry these. I can't eat them that fast, but I can freeze dry them. And now they're great to just rehydrate and serve with a meal.
And let me make a point here that we don't just, every time there's a little bit of food, we don't put it in here, but we can put it on trays or in bags, put it in the freezer, and then we do a whole batch at once. So it really becomes fairly efficient.
Yeah, so even if you have, a serving or two left over for a meal, and if you put it in the fridge, it's just going to grow mold and nobody's going to eat it, that's a really good time to put it in the freezer, because when you freeze dry it, it gets on the shelf for a long time, and then suddenly you're not tired of that anymore, and it makes for a really good meal. Another thing is we had grandkids come spend the night. Whenever they spend the night, I go out and I buy whole milk because that's what they drink. But they don't drink it all. And so this last time I had over a gallon left, and what I did is I just turned it into homemade yogurt, and then I freeze dried it because I eat yogurt. So now I've got shelf-stable yogurt that is actually fabulous, but that milk would have gone to waste if not. So that's one of the things we did. Another are these mushrooms. So the mushrooms, I bought more than what we actually used, and I looked in the fridge and I thought, oh, these are going to spoil before I use them. So instead of letting that happen, I just cut them up and I freeze dried them. This is a cheesecake that I made, and when all the company left, there was cheesecake left. And I couldn't leave that in the fridge because we all know what I would have done with that cheesecake. So I freeze dried it so that it wouldn't be, it's kind of still a temptation, but so that when we have company over again, I can open this up and share it with them. Now there are 3 other things that I wanted to show you that we've done. This is marinated chicken breast. So I got a great deal on 40 pounds of chicken breast, and I marinated it all, and then I cooked it and I cut it up and freeze dried it. Now this chicken is ready for any time I need to use it. And here's this hamburger. That's the 4th thing. We do this a lot for convenience. Now this hamburger no longer has to be in the freezer, but I'll make a big pot of vegetarian soup because Ben likes to eat vegetarian, but I like my meat. And so if I make this soup vegetarian, then what I can do is I take this and I just sprinkle my hamburger on the top of my own bowl of soup, and I mix it in, wait a minute, and then it's ready to eat. And I have hamburger in mind, but he has vegetarian, and it works really well. It's
Yeah.
it's a way that we're able to both have our diets. But I put them in these smaller containers because I like to have just the right amount for the meal that I'm going to use, or maybe for 2 meals in that jar, so that I'm not opening a whole quart jar. Now this, we had a giant pumpkin that we harvested in the fall, but it was green and it had turned yellow and was ready to eat. But it's giant. What do you do with a giant pumpkin? I cooked it all up and then we freeze dried it into these smaller containers, because now this is the perfect size for me to rehydrate it and use it like in pumpkin chocolate chip muffins or pumpkin bread, or in a soup, all kinds of different things, but it's ready. So those are the reasons why I really like to freeze dry and why it's part of my life. I recognize it's not for everybody, but for me, especially with my dietary restraints, it's a really great thing. Now, back to working with the cube. I was pretty impressed. I love that the oilless pump is in here, that it's inside, that I don't have to do anything. My job is to worry about what's on here and to push the buttons, right?
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a learning curve, as with anything. But, you know, you get that down pretty quickly, and then you know exactly how to get where you need to go.
Yeah, there absolutely was a learning curve. But the bucket's right underneath, so the water drains in a bucket that's on this cart, and it was just really easy, and I like it. Like, I can't think of anything that I really don't like about it. Jonathan, what do you think? What is your engineering perspective?
I'm not the guy that has been using it, so you know, that's her department. But the things I do like are the fact that the pump is built inside of this package. It's a cleaner, tidier package. Everything's inside. It's an oil-free pump. Not that I mind changing the oil. That to me has never been a big deal. It's a 5-minute job to drain it out and add a little more. But you know, oil-free is just one less thing that I have to think about. And I really like the cart that it's on. Not that the others can't go on a cart. Maybe a little more challenge to that, but this is really nice. It can roll out of the way when we're doing something in this room. We can just roll it off to the side and out of the way. So overall, I think it's a pretty good package.
Okay, so there is this new launch for this, right? Go to Prep4Life.com and you can find out more about the cube. But right now they're running a fantastic special on it. So I think one of the packages was like $1,000 off. So now is a really good time. If you're thinking about getting one, you might want to consider that. If you use the promo code Provident 4x4, which is actually Provident 4 times 4 or 4x4, then they will give you some free stuff, some free extra trays and some silicone mats, which the silicone mats on these, I like them a lot. They make things really easy and they wash up super easy. So I did like that really a lot. Anyway, so overall, total thumbs up. I'm super happy to have this. And now for the question of the day. If you could have the wish of your heart, what would you freeze dry? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.